Moreinu v'Rabbeinu.
Shalom Amos and Yom Ha'atzmaut Sameach to you.
Yom Ha'atzmaut Sameach. So this is part 2 of a 2-part, maybe more series. I don't know if we have.
Well, it's part 2 of 2.
It's part 2 of 2 so far.
Well, we can argue about that, and I'm so happy that we started with an argument.
Yeah. So we were discussing what is going to happen to the world if Beit HaMikdash, the temple, was to be built tomorrow. Which I think it's kind of befitting that we have this discussion during Yom Ha'atzmaut to a degree.
Yeah, absolutely. Yom Ha'atzmaut is a very important day. As I've always said, it's a game changer for the Jewish world, and one of the things that it enables us to do is not only have a homeland, which is huge in its own regard, but have a homeland in the original place that it was promised to our avot and imahot, and potentially the inheritance of the land that is given to us, the right for the land is given to us by Hashem, by God. And it gives us the ability to build the spiritual epicenter of the world, which is the temple.
Yeah.
So absolutely, it makes sense.
And then like, well, I mean, I'm doing a special thing, which you don't really know about, but I'm going to release the first part today on Yom Ha'atzmaut.
Okay.
And then we're recording the second part on Yom Ha'atzmaut. So
very good.
You get double Ha'atzmaut.
I get double Ha'atzmaut. I get 2 independents. 2 dependents.
2 people.
2 people.
That was a dumb joke. Okay. So, take it away with Tumah and Tara.
Tumah and Tara. So we talked about, to recap the first 2 things, we talked about korbanot, sacrifices, how the world would look with sacrifices, and the second thing is
world recognition of the Jewish homeland.
Very good. Which definitely has to do with Yom Ha'atzmaut.
Yeah.
And if you have the temple, then the world would definitely recognize that is also a spiritual place. It's not just for religious needs, even though it is also for religious needs, but it's much broader than that. If you have a temple that is essentially like Mecca is to the and the stone there to the Muslim world.
Yeah.
So that's what the temple will be for the Jewish world and the world at large, realizing that there's a center. As is, people realize the Western Wall, or the Wailing Wall as it's called, is the focal point of the Jewish world. That's why there's so many Jewish institutions and Torah institutions around and in and around the Old City and the Western Wall as well.
Right. And we also discussed last week as to whether the Western Wall is still going to be a significant part for the Jewish people.
That's right.
Or not.
But today's discussion want to take into something that is a little bit removed from our existence. Something that is just not practiced so much today. But is practiced in... We keep a very, very small flicker of it today, which is the laws of purity and impurity, or in Hebrew, Tumah v'Tara.
Yeah.
So first we have to explain what Tumah v'Tara is. Over 12% of the oral Torah, of the Mishnah, essentially 1/6, is dedicated to the laws of purity and impurity. So it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's even more than is dedicated to the laws of Shabbat, and there's a lot of laws of Shabbat.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one note. The second note is, what is purity, what is impurity? So the best way to describe it is spiritual life and spiritual death, or effectively life and death in its spiritual designation. I'll explain. The highest form of impurity, or tum'ah, is a dead corpse.
Yes.
A person, not necessarily an animal even, a person that died. That is called avi avot tum'ah.
The greatest of
the great the
father of
the father really essentially the chief, if you will, the highest level of impurity.
Yeah.
So that means that if a person comes in contact with someone who is deceased, whether it be in a tent or whether it be touching them or in the same vicinity,
under
the same canopy, there's laws about it. We won't get into the laws, but we're getting to the concept today. So essentially, if you're impacted by that, by the deceased, by the corpse, then that you become impure, and as a result, there's many restrictions that a person can't do, especially around things that require high levels of kedusha, of sanctity, like serving in the temple, for example, or the kohanim being birkat kohanim, or coming back into the public. Sometimes you have to isolate, depending on what type of tum'ah. This parsha we're going to read about Tazria Mitzorah, and Tazria Mitzorah has all the laws of a person getting afflicted with...
It's a double parsha.
It is.
Correct. Yeah.
Correct. We're reading Tazria Mitzorah, and it's all about if a person has spiritual afflictions, not leprosy in the sense of leprosy that was in the Middle Ages or the 19th century. That's actual disease.
A different type of.
It's a very different type. It's not the same. It's just called the same name, but it's not the same disease. This is not contagious. This one is a spiritual disease, and the kohen, the priest, knows how to determine if it's a spiritual disease or not based on a lot of different factors, and that's in the parsha. And effectively, if that person has that level of impurity, that means they have done something wrong, or they are afflicted for whatever the reason may be, and they have to remove themselves from the camp.
For a certain amount of time.
For a certain amount of time, and there's a procedure around it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about a different type of tum'ah when it comes, and then we'll explain how this is all relevant to the temple. But you have to understand the concept, or else you can't really talk about it.
Yeah, that's true.
Tum'ah v'tahara, one of the original times it's used, before I get to women's cycle, because that's the next thing. But before that, talk about food, talk about animals. We use today the term kosher, not kosher. But as you know, I've spoken about this a lot. Kosher, not kosher is a relatively very new term.
Yeah.
Almost a new age term. It just means fit for use or not fit for use.
Yeah.
But that's not a reason why you can eat an animal or not. It has nothing to do with a little bit to do with their well-being. But identifying which animal is okay and not okay has nothing to do with their well-being.
No.
It has to do with their spiritual status.
Yeah.
There's animals, and if you look in Noach, all the way back to Parashat Noach, it talks about what animals he takes. And as we know, the popular myth is that he takes two of each animal. That's true, but only for the animals that are einena tehora, that are not pure.
Yeah.
It doesn't say tameh for different reasons. That's a really fascinating concept, but that's for another time. Why does it say that aren't pure versus the Talmud talks about that in Pesachim? But to our point, the animals that were not pure, he only took 2. The animals that were pure, he took 7 of each.
Yes.
In order to be able to eat them, consume them, and also sacrifice some of them after he emerged from the flood.
Yeah.
A year and 10 days later. So the concept of kosher, not kosher, stems from the spiritual status of the animals that Hashem determined.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but those animals that he took 7 of each, those are the ones that today are the kosher animals.
That's correct. That's exactly it. That's right. So kosher has to do with purity. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Then there's a slaughtering process and all that, but identify which animals are potentially kosher is a spiritual identification.
Yeah.
It's not a physical identification. There are symbols, there's split hooves, there's truths, it's cut. And there's reasons for it, there's explanations. But really, at the end of the day, there's no real good explanation for it. What's the difference between a chicken and an eagle? I mean, you could say one eats meat, the other doesn't. But that's not 100% true. Because in a video, there was an older video in the 90s by the OU, a very good video. I think I have it here as well. A DVD. He says...
is it a kosher one?
Yeah, there's a kosher one. And it talks about he says, do you think a chicken is vegetarian? And he puts a piece of chicken in front of a chicken, and the chicken eats it. Yeah. I mean, so again, you could. The point is, you can't really say, well, one's vegetarian, one's domestic, one's not. You can to a certain point. But
you can't really rationalize the reason.
Exactly, you can't really rationalize why one animal is kosher, why is not. The answer is one is pure, one is impure. That is determined by Hashem. So purity and impurity impacts us today in the laws of kashrut. With the women's cycle, it impacts her as that's really interesting because that really talks about purity and impurity. The purest form is life. The thing that we sanctify the most is life. That's why if somebody dies, you just recognize Yom HaZikaron. Somebody dies for a greater cause, whether it be for the sake of Judaism, or they died because they're a Jew, God forbid, or protecting the state of Israel, or protecting the Jewish community, or for whatever worthy cause. There could be many worthy causes. Then we say you died on Kiddush Hashem, sanctifying God's name.
Yeah.
Obviously, we don't believe in martyrdom as an ideal. We want people to live. We say Bacharta B'chaim, choose life. And if somebody says break Shabbat or die, the answer is you break Shabbat in order to keep many Shabbatot in the future.
Yeah.
Because V'chai B'hem, we should live by them and not die by them. We don't believe in martyrdom. Though sometimes it's necessary, sometimes you have to make the ultimate sacrifice, but that's not the goal of Judaism per se. The goal of Judaism is the living. So when you have the living and dying and that recurs, you have it within a woman's cycle. A woman produces an egg once a month.
Yeah.
And that's a potential baby. I'm talking about even with teenagers, even women that are single, women that aren't married.
But if you talk about, we're talking about Torah.
Yeah.
We're talking about childbirth.
Yeah.
In Bereshit, my parasha.
Yes.
Every time Chava, so Eve, gives birth, it says Vatahar.
And she was impregnated.
Yeah, but Tahar, like Tahara.
Oh, but that's a different root word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That has a tough.
All right.
But it's like...
So that's the root word of Hey Resh Hey Hara, which is getting pregnant. Then there's the root word of Vatahar. The taf is referring to she. So it's not part of the root word.
Right. Gotcha.
It just sounds the same. But Tahara
it sounds the
is
same.
Tet,
so
and the root word is Tet Hey Resh, so it's a completely different root word.
Yeah.
I completely bursted your bubble on that one.
It did.
But it was... But
I was on a roll.
I know, but you were on a roll. But I'll save you because as a drasha, it's a great drasha. Meaning, it's not the pshat, it's not the simple meaning of the word.
No.
But as a drasha has a more allegoric and deeper meaning of the word, even though it's not the literal meaning of the word. Absolutely. You bring life into the world. That's the highest level of sanctity. We even say sometimes a person. There's a custom of opening a door for a pregnant woman, letting her go first, because maybe she's carrying Mashiach.
Right.
It's an interesting custom. So by the fifth kid, you're like, are you sure?
That's a situation.
Were the other kids not Mashiach? Like, how is this one Mashiach and the other ones scream at me? This one doesn't scream at me yet. Like, I don't know.
Mashiach might scream at you. You never know.
That is true. Mashiach will probably scream at me. And I'll change Mashiach's diaper. That's really interesting. Think of all the rabbis that the mothers had to change their diaper, knowing they're going to be great rabbis.
That's their drasha.
That's yeah. That's amazing. Think about that. Changing Moshe Rabbeinu's diaper. Anyways. That's either here nor there. That's an interesting image. Most people...
That time would have probably not been our job.
That's not going to be the topic of my next drasha. Moshe Rabbeinu's diaper. I'm happy. First of all, I say
can be the next episode if you want.
Baby stories of rabbis? That'll be hilarious.
I don't know enough baby stories.
I know also don't know enough. Apparently, I'll tell you one baby story. It's completely sidetracked. The Gaon Vilna used because he breastfed until he was like 3 or 4. So he said he's before he breastfed, he took a break and he said Shakol Niya Bidvaro, and then that's a story that's told. I don't care if it's true or not. It's a great story, so I just believe it.
You're not gonna know, are you?
It could be true. One of my kids did that. Because they breastfed till they were like 4.
But that's because you told them the story?
No, because we told them to say a bracha.
Maybe he was told to say a bracha.
So
It's the
maybe he
same.
had a beard at the age of 4. You also don't know.
Maybe. Probably not.
Probably not. No. So let's say not, for argument's sake. So the women's cycle, back to women's cycle, what it is the potential life
Yes.
that doesn't come to fruition, and what that leaves her in a state of impurity. It has nothing to do with cleanliness or not cleanliness. I mean, there's blood, right, in a woman's period once a month, but it's why a woman has to go to a mikveh and purify herself, because a mikveh purifies a person. We'll get to that in a moment. A mikveh purifies her because she was in a state of death, because she had a death inside her, or she had, she had a potential life.
The potential life
that didn't come to fruition.
Yeah.
And it's not a criticism. Is not good or bad. It's not a bad state. It's not unclean. It's not any of that. It's the state though. And that's why women have to go to mikveh. And there's a renewal. There's a whole other reasons for mikveh as well. And it's good for the relationship. And I won't get to that aspect. But it is called tameh and tahor. That's how it's called in the Torah. So these concepts of tumah v'tahor are some of the things we keep today.
Yeah.
But in the temple times, it goes way beyond that.
Yeah.
I always forget all 7, but there's 7 liquids. I usually remember 5 of them off the top of my head. One of them is dew, which is my last name. Dew, water, honey, which is probably Ceylon date honey. Blood, oil, and 2 others that I don't remember now. They all are conduits for transmitting spiritual tum'ah.
Right.
So let's say there's an apple. That's the easiest way to explain.
Is wine one of them?
Wine. Thank you. Good job, Amos.
I worked on a winery for a while.
Ah, that's true you did. That's true you did. Why would they call a wine mud house? I still don't have to ask Clayton.
Maybe it's impure. I don't know.
Is it impure? Maybe it's pure.
Maybe it's pure.
Well, like something earthenware. Once it's impure, you can't change it. You have to shatter it. So maybe if the wine's not good, you shatter the bottles. I don't know.
I don't
think that was their thinking. No.
But they fill it with gas. So one of the lines.
Do they?
Yeah. So
how does that work?
They clean because there might be some broken glass or something in the bottles.
Oh.
So when it goes into the line, they fill the bottle with some sort of gas or like that. They'll rinse it out and then they'll fill it with gas to completely sort of sterilize the bottle.
Oh, nice.
But one of the lines fills up.
Doesn't it mold like that if it stays wet?
No.
It
doesn't stay wet.
Oh, okay.
It's the inside, and so it's like
dry
put upside down and then
right,
and then like it drains out.
Put the wine in when there's nothing in there.
Yeah. But the one of the lines was they were filling with gas, but it pumps too much gas or something, and so every so often the bottle goes boom.
Oh, really?
Inside the line. Wasn't the line that I was working on, but it was like 2 lines down, and so they get a lot of delays because of that. Sort of once every 2 hours or something.
Oh, that's not good.
It sounds like a gunshot going off, but it was fun.
That sounds like a lot of fun. Also sounds like they have to fix it.
Yeah.
Call Clayton.
It wasn't the line that Clayton's one, was it?
Oh, okay, fine. There's another line.
I think he was happy.
Okay. He's happy because somebody else's wine. So is it competitors?
True. Might be. I don't know. It was line 2. I was on line 4. So it was different.
All right, back to purity.
Wine stories.
We're getting wine stories.
Wine stories.
Stop whining.
New podcast.
Podcast. Stop whining.
And we only talk about wine. I can't really contribute.
That's such a good name for a podcast. Stop whining. Your wine stop shop. Oh boy.
Anyway.
So, for example, let's say somebody is a zav, is type of tum'ah. So they're impure. Now they touch an apple. So by touching the apple, the apple is not automatically impure. Like if it's impure, you can't eat it, or you'd have to wash your hands and eat it, or whatnot.
Yeah.
You have to go to the mikveh potentially, or somebody who was a kohen couldn't eat it.
Yes.
right? And that's where we're going to get to 3 and 4 crossover.
Yeah, that's the crossover between
Yeah.
the two.
So you have, or let's say this apple was given as part of your mandatory gift to the Kohanim, to the priest.
Yeah.
Your trumot, and then you have your tithing, which you give to the Levites because they serve in the temple. Right? So for
10% and 10% of that or something.
Yeah, it's so we'll get into the calculations in the fourth part.
Yeah.
And you're supposed to give it to them. Now, a Kohen has to be in a constant state of purity. The reason they have to be in constant state of purity is because they have to work in the temple.
Yes.
So if there was some dew fell on the apple because he left it outside, and it was a sunny day and dew fell on it, and then you're a zav.
After the apple is picked.
Yeah, after the apple is picked.
Because
thank you. Yes.
They'll
After the apple is picked. Yeah, correct. Well, the apple's on the tree. There's no consequence. Correct. So you leave a basket of apples outside. You have 100 kilos of apples, and you take 2 kilos to the Kohanim. That's 2%. So you take 2%, taking your 2 baskets. You're happily giving it to the Kohanim because that's how they get their food and money and everything. Because everybody gives them, everybody funds them. It's just like taxes, essentially.
Yeah.
Effectively.
Rough. Yeah.
Right. And until dew falls on them and you touch it, if you're a zav, now you've transmitted your tum'ah
to the whole basket.
To the whole lot.
Yeah.
And then it's called trumat tme'ah, and they can't eat it. And there's not necessarily a way to purify it. You can purify yourself. You can't really purify the apple. But if there's no dew, then you can't. So what do you do? You wash your hands. You wash your hands not necessarily with a bracha. Which is why, by the way...
Not necessarily with a bracha.
Correct.
Is that like the seder?
Exactly. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
That's why... That's actually the reason we wash our hands before karpas. Because of this very same reason. So when we touch it, we'll be in a state of purity so that we won't impurify.
But when you say not necessarily with a bracha, means that you could say a bracha, or
it means that I have to review the laws because I don't remember. That's what it means. But it's not like bread where you say it with a netilat yadayim with a bracha.
Yeah, that's.
There's even a halacha today that if a fruit is, you should take a fruit, you should dry it, even though we don't keep the laws of tumah v'tahara. Like today, it's of no real consequence. You can give it to a kohen, and the kohen could eat it because everyone is considered becheskat tme'emet. Everyone is basically saying everyone is impure today.
Yeah.
In a temple, when there was a temple in Jerusalem, even the second temple, which was on some level a lower status of purity and impurity. There were entire balconies dedicated to children of Kohanim that were called pure balconies. It wasn't a racist thing. It was to keep them.
No, it sounds like when you go to a theater.
Yeah.
And there's the balcony views.
Yeah.
And the people that are important sit in the balcony view, and
yeah,
everyone else sits in the.
So these were balconies so that kids would play with kids that were pure. So that they'd stay pure so that they can serve in the temple.
Yeah.
The extreme, and even today, Kohanim today are not allowed to go into cemeteries.
Yeah.
They're technically not supposed to go into the actual graves. They can go next to a grave. And they can come in contact with deceased of one of the 7 close relatives. Which are parents, siblings, spouse, and children. God forbid. So 2 of each and 1 spouse, so that's 7. Now we recently had a funeral here with the Kohanim. I actually requested the city council with the funeral directors to actually make the grave, not to keep it in the same row, but to open a new row.
Yeah.
And to put it at the edge of the row so that the family can come and visit. Right next to the grave, they did that.
Yeah.
And that was very good. And I complimented them even at the funeral itself. But even today, when there's Kohanim, they go to a separate room in order to be part of the funeral. They can't be in the same room as the deceased. that's an important halacha that we still keep today.
Yeah.
And even in Israel and Har Herzl and other cemeteries,
Everywhere.
there's pathways for Kohanim. Like these are the pathways, and it's a pathway that you pass by the graves, but you don't go within the halachic proximity of the grave, the 4 amot or whatever it is. It's about 2 meters, more or less. So that's what we keep today. But the extreme is that the high priest can't even leave the temple when they escort the dead, even for his own parents.
With the high priest.
The high priest.
Only. Yeah.
Kohen Gadol. Not any priest. Right? The high priest. That's really, really extreme. And the concept is that you always have to be in a state of purity and a state of simcha, a state of happiness, in order to serve in the temple.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Because you can't really force someone's emotion while they're dealing with a relative passing away. In that sense. So how would someone like a Kohen Gadol deal with that? Is there a transfer or... what would happen?
Yeah. Well, I'll share with you a personal story. This is my wife and I. We don't keep it a secret. So my wife and I, when we started our marriage, we started with a stillbirth. Yeah, stillbirth. I think I told you at one point, but So that was when we were living in the Golan. Anyways, there was a rabbi. I won't say who it was, because that would be good. But there was a rabbi who was trying to coach me. And at this point, how old was I? I was 23 years old, 24, just turned 24. So I was a pretty young guy. Been married for less than a year, because we conceived pretty quickly after we got married, and in yeshiva, and I was a little bit in the Golan. My family, my family's in Toronto. They were visiting them. My wife's family's in Jerusalem. And this rabbi tried to give me guidance. It was very interesting guidance, but it had to do with this. I don't even know what to think about it till this day. That he said that he lost kids, and all these stories came out. Like, if I don't wish this on anybody, but if a person has a tragedy or whatever it is, usually out of the woodworks, all these stories come out about all these people that had similar tragedies that you never knew about.
Yeah.
And oh my God, in the Golan, I was living in the town of Chispin, all these stories came out. This couple lost twins. It was like...
Yeah, I've been roughly in a similar position. Not with
right,
losing children,
right,
but with like cancer stories.
Yeah, sure.
So like,
sure. Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
I know I can share with you one. My sister had cancer.
Yeah,
so.
and then same.
Well, I know.
I'm not proud, but
right. Yeah, no. Yeah. When it comes.
But it's also like everyone and their brother has someone who's like, oh, my sister's auntie's dog, or something, which can be a little bit annoying sometimes, but it depends.
Yeah, it depends if it's supportive or not. That's a very interesting podcast. How to support people in tragedies and in grief, and how not to support them.
That's the one Shoshana wants to come for.
Oh, definitely. Because most of the comments aren't helpful. All right, we'll say that for another podcast. The reason I brought it up, because the rabbi, one of the prominent rabbis there at the yeshiva at the time, and still is, and I'm friends with his son, and I adore him personally. He's a great guy. But what he told me is that he lost a kid, and he doesn't talk about it. He made a conscious choice not to talk about it, and he says I shouldn't talk about it either. That was his advice to me. Like, bury it. Well, no pun intended. But move on with your life. Be besimcha, just like the Kohen Gadol, who doesn't leave the temple because he can't be in a state of sadness. He has to always be in a state of simcha. So just erase, just cut it off.
Interesting.
That's what he said. It was incredibly not helpful because I had a lot to process, and I think it was wrong advice for me.
Yeah.
And I don't give that advice to anybody. But was very interesting. So you ask, how can a person do it? I mean, this rabbi did it. He doesn't. He lives his life. His life continues. He is besimcha. He truly is. He doesn't carry around as weight. You don't even know about it until he tells you about it. And not a lot of people know about a situation, or maybe people do, but it doesn't drag him down. It didn't stop his life or whatever. And that's what he said about the Kohen Gadol. I mean, be in a state of simcha, but it's all about trying to distance yourself from things that are either death or spiritual death or as a result of a sin or essentially a loss of a potential life. And you want to basically distance yourself from that, and then you get into purity. That is purity. In a mikvah, what's purity? Where do you go to be pure? In a mikvah, what's a mikvah? It's not just water.
No.
It's the ideal mikvah is a running wellspring, a ma'ayan.
Yeah.
That's a rushing water, and you can immerse them there. Right? Today, mikvaot are essentially rainwater. Right? It's more stagnant, but still, it is rainwater. It can't be swamp water. It also has to be fresh. And water moves. Water is life. Water produces life. Water flows. Yeah, if water stays stagnant, it becomes swamp-like water, and then frogs and mosquitoes and alligators and stuff.
And different
diseases, malaria.
Yeah.
Right. So it gets to be a huge problem. And that's really the analogy for life. You have to keep moving. You have to keep moving in order to be in a state of purity. So you go to the moving waters in order to purify yourself, in order to distance yourself from death, which is literally the most stagnant thing that is in this world. Because when a person dies, then that's it. They can't progress in this world.
Yeah.
It's a much deeper concept.
Yeah.
But that is the concept of purity and impurity. That comes to the forefront of everything you do, even when you eat an apple in the times of the temple.
Yeah. So let's take a step back, but it will bridge into into number 4.
Yeah.
So in the context of a Kohen Gadol being in the state of Simchat Tamid.
Yeah.
Which Tamid means forever. Or as long as it can. Always, yeah. And being in a state of Simcha is not fake it till you make it. It's genuine elation.
Correct. God knows if you're a simcha or not. You can't fake it.
Yeah, you can't.
I mean, there is fake it till you make it. That's a true thing.
No, but like in the context of Kohen Gadol serving in the Beit Mikdash,
it's really besimcha.
He cannot be like, "How are you? How are you going?" and then go to the next room and collapse in tears.
That's right.
He can't do that.
Right.
He needs to be in genuine elation throughout the day for however long he serves as the Kohen Gadol.
That's right.
So, what are his roles other than being happy all the time?
Oh, the Kohen Gadol. I mean, he has specific jobs he does in the temple, lights the menorah. Yeah, he's the executive. He's the CEO of the temple.
Yeah,
that's what he is. So, which today would be a very high-paid position.
But he's not by himself. There are other Kohanim around.
Yeah, as CEO, you delegate to the other Kohanim. You make sure that everything's running properly. There's a few things that the Kohen Gadol must do himself. For example, lighting the menorah, the Ketoret, the daily routines. But
anything to do with the Kodesh Kodeshim, right?
Yeah, anything to do with the Kodesh Kodeshim, with the Holy of Holies, and also anything to do with Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is all on the Kohen. He has to do it, everything. And the rest he delegates to the other Kohanim, and he's there also to answer for any questions, deal with any problems and issues and whatnot. And he's also the political representative of the temple. So he's a political. So if the temple has to send somebody to represent them, he represents the temple. So everything he does is scrutinized. Just like a rabbi. But imagine you being the rabbi and you're delegating to other rabbis and you're the chief rabbi of the most holy place in the entire world.
And you're happy all the time. So happy.
You have to be.
That people think you're high.
No. You see, happiness doesn't have to be that you're always smiling.
No.
A state of simcha means you're always in a state of you're never in sadness. You can be serious and be besimcha.
Okay.
Like my rabbi told me that. Rav Amnon Sugarman, who I'm comfortable saying his name at this point. It's not the previous rabbi in the other story, but Rosh Yeshiva, same yeshiva.
Yeah.
Golan Heights. Now he's the president emeritus because somebody else is a Rosh Yeshiva because he's basically semi-retired. He's close to 80 at this point, and thank God.
Yeah.
Unbelievable accomplishment. He established like the Torah that's taught in the Golan Heights.
Yeah.
Is basically because of him and 2 other rabbis. Like it's really amazing what he's done. Yeah, and of course all the students and everything, but he built it up. He's a very impressive guy.
That's cool.
And he was also the rabbi in my wedding, so I was happy about that. Rav Amnon Sugarman told us about Simchat Torah, when you dance, and there's elation and whatnot, and as us yeshiva bachers, the goal is to wear white shirts and dance and sweat a lot and dance. Simchat Torah, you dance like till 2-3 in the afternoon, and there's kiddush in the middle. You go back and dance, and he says sometimes you'll see me and other people just sitting down during the dancing and learning and reading a book. And don't think that's not besimcha. Don't think we're being like alta cuckers or whatnot, or we're being cop-outs. No. You can be besimcha and learn and be serious, and you're 100% besimcha. You don't have to always be dancing and elating and jumping to be besimcha. That's a real thing.
Because, learning Torah is a big thing in the state of.
That's why you can't learn Torah on Tisha B'av. There's only specific things.
Or when you're sitting Shiva.
Because it gives you happiness.
Yeah,
it does. So you have genuine happiness. You can be serious and happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most cases it's serious and somewhat confused, but that's okay.
Well, that's only because of the stories we get in Talmud class. It throws everybody off. Whereas somebody said last Monday is wildly entertaining. I'm like, that's why I come to the class, because it's entertaining.
And we learned maybe 2 lines of Talmud on Monday. We'll get through the book eventually.
We did like 4 lines last Monday, but then we talked about toilet paper on Shabbat and other things, like fridge lights, and thank God. Stories of Manchester.
Okay. It's a fun class, though.
It is a fun class. Yeah, by the way, if you're listening to this, come to the Monday Talmud class. Shameless plug for the Monday Talmud class. Just come for the entertainment.
Yeah, it's like a mini podcast.
Yeah.
Except
it's not broadcasted anywhere.
No.
Thank God.
No. We'll hear a lot of stories, though.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, a lot of stories.
It's fun. And we're both attend.
So. Usually from a particular city in England.
Yeah. Well, you have to attend. I don't have to, but I will. Mm-hmm. Because it's a good way to start the week.
It is a great way to start the week.
Yeah.
This Monday I'll be in Auckland.
Lonoa.
Great.
We'll have it on Mondays.
The financial structure is an interesting one because basically you have to look it up, and we won't go through the whole thing now. But think about the United States for a minute before we get to. You have different types of taxes. You have state taxes. You have federal taxes.
Yeah.
You have income tax. You have a lot of different taxes for different things. Some states are better to live in than others because they don't have state taxes, like Texas or Florida, or I think Florida doesn't have income tax, and Texas doesn't have state taxes. I'm sure about Texas. I'm not sure about Florida.
But then,
or the opposite. But basically, there's tax breaks there because of whatever reasons, however they fund things and whatnot.
However they made decisions.
Yeah, correct. And so, if you think, why do you have taxes? Instead of saying, okay, we're going to build private roads, or we're going to, or instead of saying, we need people to step up and build private roads, and then everyone would build a private road and charge everybody for it as a business. The government says we're going to provide goods and services for the people. How are we going to do that? We need money. Where's the money going to come from? From the people. Think of here, like one of the things I really, really love in New Zealand is free dental care for my kids. I mean, that saves me so much money.
Yeah.
But it's not like I don't pay for it. Or when I go to the doctor, I don't pay money for it. I pay like $5 for the medication if it's prescription. Right? It's so cheap. It's subsidized. The medication costs hundreds of dollars sometimes, or $50, or $100, or the doctor's visits could cost $250. Even my visits are they charge me $40 or $45, but the visit itself probably costs $200 just for their time. Somebody pays for it. Who pays for it? Me, but through the taxes. So, and the whole idea of taxes is that you pay a percentage of your income, so that you know you can afford it. You're not hit with personal or bribery or God forbid or personal or what people charge for you, and you're not at the mercy of what they charge for you.
Yeah.
And as a result of your taxes, you get schooling and roads and government and medical care and whatever support the country has.
Yeah.
That's the idea. And different countries have different ways of doing it. Won't get into taxes in countries and how that works and if there's corruption or not or what level of corruption. And
there's plenty of other podcasts that you can listen to.
So how does it work? But the service that the government gives us, meaning you're not going to build a road. Let's focus on roads for it. And you're not going to, and you appreciate the fact that you can have free dental care for your kids.
Yeah.
Everyone appreciates that. If you don't appreciate that, then you need a gut check. Like, you should appreciate that. If you don't, come talk to me. I'll make you appreciate that. You have to. By convincing you.
Yeah. You can argue with them.
Yeah, you can argue with me.
That's fun.
But the thing about spiritually, who's going to operate the temple? You're not going to operate the temple.
No.
And you're telling somebody, not only that, but you're also telling these guys, these Kohanim and Leviim, and Kohans and Levites, to operate the temple. And to do it not just for them. They're not doing it for them. They're doing it for you.
For everyone.
For everyone. For the collective. And for the world on a greater... They're operating the most important spiritual structure ever in the world, specifically in the Jewish world. And now you can have 100% of the commandments that we can do instead of 40% without the Beit HaMikdash. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So in order to do that, somebody needs to fund that. Somebody needs to fund it. There's a whole funding structure the Torah has in place where if you have, it's an agriculture worker, if you have, let's say 100 acres of land, and they produce fruit. So effectively, you need to give 2% of that.
That doesn't include the corner that you leave
there's
for
a lot
the
of
poor.
different things. First of all, of the produce you have, right? You have to leave a corner, and then there's leket, shicham for the poor people. There's what you give to the poor people. Then there is 2% taxes to the Kohanim. Of that, of what's remaining of the 98%, 10% of that goes to the Levites, which is effectively 9.8%. So essentially giving 11.8% taxes, which is not so high.
No, it's not.
It's not. You think about
pretty standard.
Yeah, you think I mean, it seems like 2%. I remember learning 10%. Oh my God, that's a lot of percentage. And then you think about there's some incomes that it depends on your income bracket. You can be taxed 40%.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot of income loss. And you have to recover the taxes. Ways to get around it. That's why people hire accountants in order to do that legally, and not to be tax evaders.
Yeah.
Right. So, but there's ways, and then there's donation. Then there's, for example, a very interesting thing: would the government subsidize any of this and basically say, "I want you to give the Kohanim, and as a result, I'll give you, like IRD does, a third of the money back." Which is interesting. Maybe. I don't know. The point is that you could come up with a system like that. Lots of countries around the world give tax breaks or credits to people that give donations to charitable trusts and 501c3s in the States and whatnot. And people give taxes in order to get the...
Now,
people give donations in order to get tax breaks.
Are Levites also obligated in those taxes?
For the Kohanim?
For the Kohanim.
No, I don't think so. I have to look that up again. But I don't think so, because you were a recipient.
Yeah, but you're getting 10%. But like, say you're a Levites are also.
But Levites, the reason why Levites get 10% is a slightly different reason. First of all, the Kohanim are from the tribe of Levites.
Like what? Yeah, but the Kohanim are
very specific
being facilitated. You as Amaritz.
Yeah.
Facilitating the Kohanim's temple work. With that.
Right, but the Levites don't have an inheritance in the land. That's a different discussion, because they have 42 cities. They operate really 48 with the cities of refuge. They operate 42 cities, but they don't have a local government.
No.
Like, if you think about, like, for example, if you're the tribe of Asher and you're living in the inheritance of Asher, which is the north of Israel, essentially the north central Galilee.
Yeah.
Or Mate Asher is today the army, called Mate Asher.
Yeah.
They keep the name. It's really cool. You effectively are governed by the federal government and by your local tribe. If we ever do that again.
Yeah.
I don't think we'll ever do that again. But if you did, you'd be governed by your local tribe. Yeah. Every tribe governed themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And you have that in Israel now, with local municipalities and local regions, Mo'atza Ezorit and Mo'atza Mekomit, and you have different budgets from different places. Yeah, not everything comes from the Ministry of Education. Some things are paid for by the Mo'atza.
Yeah.
Right, and the Mo'atza gets money from businesses and other places in their own budget, and they have their own budget, and they have their own staff and whatnot. So it's very similar. But the Levites don't have their own Mo'atza, because they don't have a land. They are literally scattered around the country in select cities. So you can have mayors of those cities, but you don't have the Mo'atza, but you're part of somebody else's Mo'atza. And that's why you need the taxes, because you don't have a budget. Everyone has to fund you to be a Levite city.
That's interesting.
Because you have to go and serve in the temple. And the goal of all those people is to go and teach Torah to the masses. So they'd be mass educators. And they'd also sing in the temple. And
state-funded education.
Yeah, state-funded. It's a state-funded education, Torah education.
Yeah.
And who funds it? The people.
Through their taxes.
That's right.
Tithes.
Yeah. So it's really the same. Today, what would happen is that you'd probably, you don't have to necessarily, you can give your fruit, but you don't necessarily have to give your fruit. I think what would happen is that everyone would make whatever their income, and there'd be state taxes based on, you have your Trumot tax, your Maasrot tax, and whatnot. And today, when you take Trumot and Maasrot from the fruits, you essentially either give it to a poor person or chuck it.
Yeah.
So that we're giving tithe from each thing that is grown in Israel. Make sure you give it to somebody of need or whatnot. But you don't give it to a Levite. It could be a business owned by a Kohen. He doesn't give it to himself, because we don't operate that way today, because there's no temple.
Yeah.
So the whole tax structure will change when there's a temple. It's really groundbreaking stuff if you think about it.
So from this, you'd also say you're an average worker. You don't have a farm or anything, or a field.
Right.
You'll do the same with your income.
So that's what I don't know.
Because I believe that the only context that they talk about really is within agriculture and horticulture.
Yeah, that's right. So I don't know, but I believe so. I mean, there's going to be a temple tax or whatnot. They'll call it whatever they call it, but effectively it would be Trumot Maasrot. I'm sure you'll see a lot of rabbis weigh in on that when there's a temple.
Yeah.
But there will be systems in place.
I mean, decisions will definitely have to be made when that happens. Yeah. Big decisions as well.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, who's going to be Kohen Gadol? How are we going to decide it?
Oh, boy. That's probably one of the reasons the temple isn't built right now. By the way, even when it was built in the second temple, it's no secret that...
I mean, there was
in
always a power struggle.
always.
For
It's
the
political
Queen.
position.
First temple, second temple as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
More in the second temple, but also the first temple. More in the second temple. And it was also bribed. I mean, there's lots of bribes that went on, especially when we were governed by the Greeks or the Romans or whatnot. Even the Hashmonaim, there's a lot of protexia. There's a lot of different.
Yeah, protexia is something that's
vitamin P.
Through and through.
Through and through. Yeah.
From the time
before
we entered Egypt.
That's right. Not what you know, it's who you know.
On that note.
On that note.
We'll call it a day.
We will call it a day.
Okay.
It was
so
a pleasure.
This has been another episode of Everything Under the Sun. Part 2 of 2. Or maybe more. We don't know.
We covered all 4 topics.
We do. We might have more though. We don't know.
In the future.
Yeah.
Yes. Next week we're off.
Next week we are off. But we'll be back. I mean, you'll still have you'll have this episode to listen to.
That's right. Yeah, this episode. You can listen to this episode in 2 parts.
This should be okay.
If you have suggestions, leave it in the comments if the things you want to hear about.
Yeah, and if you don't agree with us about anything,
yes,
feel free to argue with us.
Absolutely.
Because we love that.
If you don't argue with us, we'll argue with you first, and then you can argue back.
Yeah, and on occasion we'll argue with each other.
That's right, on occasion. Only when we feel like it.
Only when cricket and baseball comes up. Have a good week, Rabbi.
Okay, you too, Amos.